Problem with most people is they treat soil like dirt, but it is soil, it's not dirt. They disregard it, they don't realise what is in the soil, the living biota that can be under there. If you have a healthy soil, you can have anywhere between 9 to 12 tonnes of living mass per hectare under the surface of the soil. And that's far more than you will ever have of anything living above the soil. Maybe 3 cows to a hectare, probably 1.5 tonnes. But when you can have between 9 and 12 tonnes under your feet, and that's the whole problem, is most people don't know what's happening under their feet. New Zealand has 10 times more erosion than any other country in the OECD, in the developed world. Between 350 to 400,000 tonnes a year ends up in the sea. Partially because of the topography, partially because of, or mostly because of what man has done when they came here. All our cities and everything are built on the most productive soils, volcanic soils, etc. We cover them in buildings and asphalt and concrete. And so now we're also starting to farm on the fringe soils that are out where the country's quite steep and it should never ever have been cleared, a lot of it. And also the chemicals that we're putting on the soil is ruining that soil structure. The biology that's under the soil acts like a glue. 2 photos done through an electron microscope, one with a chemical soil, and you can see every grain, like grains of sand in that soil. The one next to it is a biological soil, and it's covered in like spider webs and a massive glue. You cannot even see into that soil. And that is what holds the soil structure together. And this is what we need on our hills. When we have huge storms, the slips and everything are incredible. And that all ends up in the sea. And that is all the colloids. The colloids are very minute particles, finer than talcum powder. And that's what holds the nutrients in the soil. When we see dust blowing from behind a tractor or whatever, when they're ploughing a rotary hoeing a paddock, those are your colloids. That's your nutrient blowing away. When you see sediment flowing down a stream, those are your colloids. Nutrient loss again. And 350 to 400,000 tonnes a year into the oceans. It's not good. And when you use a chemical fertiliser, where each of those little granules of that product lands, through a process called osmosis, it sucks the moisture out of the bacteria that are feeding your plants, the fine root feeding hairs of your plants, the beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizal fungi, etc. And so it depletes the actual living biota of the soil. Now the mycorrhizal fungi actually attach themselves into the feeding root hair of the plant. They go in through the cell wall. Now those mycorrhizal fungi, they can reach out and get minerals that the plant can't reach. But in the return, the plant exudates or sweats plant sugars to feed them. Now, the only living thing that can produce plant sugars is a green leaf plant through photosynthesis. Now, these other critters that are under the ground, like your bacteria that are in the rhizosphere, which is the root zone of the plant, they live on plant sugars too, but it's dark down there and they don't have chlorophyll. So they get fed by the plants with the exudates or the plant sugars as well. So the mycorrhizal fungi, they can increase the root feeding area of a plant by up to 1,000 times by having those beneficial fungi in the soil. So you don't want to go wiping those guys out. If you're using salt-based fertilisers, etc., acid-based fertilisers, they don't like it. That is, as I said earlier on, it's destroying the bacteria and the fungi that are in the soil, which is a food for the earthworm. So by having good moist soil, building up the humus in your soil, using a biological fertiliser, a natural fertiliser, which is going to build up your humus. Humus, it's just a dark mass and full of living organisms, etc. Whereas compost is what you're doing when you're breaking it down. If you can build up your humus levels in your soil, your organic carbon, by 1%, that will increase your moisture retention by up to 6%, 6,000 litres per hectare, the equivalent of 6 millimetres of rain, by increasing that by 1%. But you build the topsoil down, not up. We've had areas where they've had 70, 75 mils of like a topsoil, sort of a marine topsoil, and then below that is a marine clay pan. And after 6 to 7 years, we've built that up to 1.5 spade depths of topsoil. And then we've climbed over to the neighbour's place that's still using urea, and he's the same as when we first started. Once you get your soil into condition, things really follow suit. Animal health, everything.